Hello, magical people. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us. We are the Protego Foundation presents How to Be an Activist Fandom-style with Ellie Darcey-Alden. Yay! And so as far as the Protego Foundation, we were founded in 2015. We're the first fandom, animal rights focused organization that is Harry Potter centric. We kind of branch out into other fandoms as well, but we pretty much were merging together two worlds that we were very passionate about to create something that was very easy to connect with other people, making our goals accessible in a way that people can understand and connect with on a deeper level, which is great. And we've had a couple different campaigns called Adopt a Pygmy Puff, Find Dougal, Protect the Puffs, Wizards for Environmental Protection, and then one of our biggest ones is ASIO Vegan Butterbeer. This was us reaching out to different parks. I'm like, sorry, we gotta censor ourselves. Certain magical parks that offer butterbeer as a beverage that is not vegan friendly because of the foam on top. Now we have successfully had that reached out to various parks as well as Florida area and things like that, and we're really excited about that. And we also have the Protego Cast podcast where we have different people come on, talk about fandom and our animal rights sort of things. But we're going to be covering pretty much activism as a whole during this panel, so we're excited to get into it. And so just to introduce myself, so I'm Megs, I'm one of the graphic designers here at the Protego Foundation. I also have my own Harry Potter podcast called Care of Magical Shippers, where we talk about different ships and fan fiction and fan art and things like that. Yeah, we talked about this. It's like, that's weird, but also cool, you do you. Yeah. So I also volunteer for MuggleNet and OTW, which is AO3, and so I'm a fandom crazy person and do a lot of different things, and then I'm also here. So,
I'm Miguel Stonecipher. I am the Community and Programs Director with the Protego Foundation. My day job is not as fun. I work in finance and project management, so this is the fun thing that I get to do. This is the outlet that I have to, just get creative and meet people in the fandom. So, yeah. And then, of course, our special guest.
Yeah.
I'm Ellie. I'm an actor and sort of a producer person and an ambassador for the Protego Foundation. And I've been working with them now for close to 2 years, which has been absolutely wonderful. And I've been acting since I was really young, and I was very lucky to be a part of magical film series.
Yes. Super magical.
I can't really talk about, but that's sort of what led me to work with the Protego Foundation. It's been lovely.
Yeah.
So, as far as activism or fan activism, what is it, and what does it mean to you?
So to me, as far as fan activism goes, it's something that creates activism accessible. It's kind of like I said in the introduction, finding a way to connect with people who wouldn't otherwise be able to find a way to merge the gap between something that seems like, oh, that's a big thing that I don't see that how I as a small person could be a part of, but I have this passion behind, for us, a magical wizard series that we really love, and so bringing that together of how can we mesh that with animals, so magical creatures, things like that, so that we're able to reach more people versus just being one or the other thing. So it's getting the opportunity to connect with other people in fandom to be able to understand something on their level, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, that's great.
I think sort of very similar. I think it is we're very lucky in this magical fandom to everyone's very close and loving, and so we have a very tight-knit community. So for me, I think it's within that community raising awareness for supporting various different issues that we believe in. It's coming together and using that sort of force that we have behind it to push those issues further.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's kind of like bridging that cognitive dissonance of like what's happening in the real world and things that we get passionate about seeing in movies and in shows and in books. You know, I know for me, I wasn't really like animal rights wasn't really on my radar until I started listening to fan podcasts. Particularly the Chick Peeps podcast, which is hosted by Ivana Lynch and Tyler Starr, who is the co-creator of the Protego Foundation. And so that's how I found out about the Protego Foundation and got involved and found this great community. But you know, most recently, there was a popular cosmic superhero movie that had animal testing as one of its like big plot points. And that was definitely one of those things that people were able to point at and be like, hey look, this is terrible, this makes us feel really bad. And guess what, it's happening in real life too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of, it helps us to make those connections on what's happening in the movies that we love and the shows that we love and what's happening in real life.
So what are some examples of other groups that do fan activism?
Yeah, so I will start with the one that kind of inspired the Protego Foundation, Fandom Forward, which was previously the HP Alliance. So by now they've kind of expanded their fandom reach to other different types of fandoms, and they kind of do it all. Most recently, when there was a very popular mermaid musical that came out. They did a campaign called Protect the Mermaids, Protect the Water, and so they were raising awareness and money and you know, giving donated funds to environmental causes and providing clean drinking water to to communities, and then some of that money for the Protect the Mermaids part of it was going to LGBTQ plus charities, trans, non-binary, and gender diverse kids. So they do those types of campaigns throughout the year, which is whatever is popular at the time.
And something that's on a scale that, especially for a lot of fandom folks that are involved in fan fiction, which I know a lot of people, including myself, are very positive, very passionate about fan fiction. The OTW, which is the Organization for Transformative Works, have been around for a long time, working really hard to protect fandom creators, save old works from getting deleted from, in physical presence or online presences, being able to offer legal support to any, all fandom creators so that we don't get, run into any issues with like copyright infringement or things like that. Like it's not anything big, but it is. Like there's like hundreds of thousands of users and millions of stories that are on AO3, so it reaches so many people, and it's just nice to know that we have such a big organization, all volunteers from every sort of level coming together to protect something we all love, which I think is absolutely great.
There's a campaign that I got like sort of involved with, which is the Always Keep Fighting campaign, which was sort of started by Jared Padalecki, who is the star of the TV show that I can't name, but it's really big. And I was a big fan in my teens. And it was started by him, which he was the actor, but then it got really picked up by a lot of the fans, and it was centered around mental health awareness and things like that, which is really important and which I sort of connected to in my teens a bit. And that, I think, was an interesting thing because it actually started with him, and he was the one that kickstarted it, and then the fans just ran with it. So I think from an actor's perspective, when you have a fandom that is really passionate about those things, but that also loves the actors, they tend to run with it and push things a bit further. So that, I sort of experienced that on both sides, I think, and that was a really big one for me personally.
Yeah, yeah, which is great. I mean, playing off of that, it's wonderful when it's that became accidental activism, which also has value too. We don't realize our impact until we figure it out later on. So for something to grow to that extent, especially the people that know what it is and what impact it has, it's huge and warms our hearts so much when we see things happen kind of organically, is the best way to put it. So of course we come from the magical wizarding fandom that we all know and love. And so we all, you know, have our specific, I guess, houses, as you would say. So what do we think that the different houses that we, you know, represent ourselves push us into? Like, what does that mean for activism? Like, what are those traits and how does that affect your activism journey? I guess is the best way to put it. Who wants to go first?
I'm a Gryffindor, but I'm a little bit of a Hufflepuff as well. And I think, so I'm sort of on like both sides of the spectrum, I think. Like my Gryffindor is very open to sharing opinions and very passionate, and I think I really enjoy having conversations with people about, you know, how I'm an activist and the things that I fight for and everything like that. But the Hufflepuff in me is like slightly more low-key, and I think that there is like a place in the fan activism world that is for people who are slightly more introverted, don't always want to be on the front lines. So I think I tend to jump between those two, and I'm somewhat, I would say, a compassionate person. So I just tend to have understanding of that everyone has different opinions and that can be very valid, and so bringing that into conversation instead of jumping to judgment is a really important thing for me.
I can relate to trying to be like low-key in your activism. Honestly, like, you know, tabling here and doing this has been like the most like out front that I've been about activism. Like, you know, I usually like to be on the planning side or just like, you know, behind the scenes, but this has honestly just been such a great experience. I am a Hufflepuff, and I think one of the things that Hufflepuffs bring to the table is that we are very inclusive and we're, you know, a very warm bunch, right? But we always try to consider everybody in the conversation. So like, speaking specifically for, you know, the Protego Foundation veganism, I am one to understand, number one, the struggle that people go through in trying to figure out, like, number one, going vegan, but also just like loving animals and everything, but also try to include marginalized communities in that conversation, because a lot of times, you know, you've got like the vegans, the scary vegans, that will be like, oh, you can't, everyone can go vegan, it's easy, like, but it's not. You know, for some communities, they grow up on food, that's how they show their love, and to have them, to tell them like, you need to change, it's not as easy, and they need education, they need resources. You know, we need to advocate for communities where, you know, there's food deserts, that they can't get organic foods, and they can't get, you know, vegan alternatives, so it's not as easy for them to make that switch.
It's got the Hufflepuff compassion of understanding everyone has their own speed and level. Yeah. I, however, am a Slytherin. So of course, like, what is a Slytherin doing good stuff? No, just kidding. No, what I see from Slytherin aspect, like we brought up Tyler Starr, who was one of the co-founders of the Protego Foundation, big Slytherin. Awesome, we're great. So definitely when it comes to Slytherin traits and things like that, I love to push the kind of the ambition side of things, where if we see that something is lacking, we're not just gonna like make the suggestion that it should exist, we're gonna make it. Like, it's going to happen. So just being that proactive, it kind of goes hand in hand with a little bit like of Gryffindor energy, but with a little bit more like lots of planning and strategizing and things like that. So that I always love about myself and why I'm involved in so many different things is because I'm like, oh, this needs to be done. I can do it. I'll do it. Like, so,
ambition.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just like, and plus, like, you know, also a little bit that, like, also Slytherin. I'm like, it's odd. Like, I like that my name is attached to those things. So that's also that's always fun too. But I love being a part of different organizations and the impact that they have, and that makes me feel very proud to be a part of those organizations as well. So, proud Slytherin activist over here.
I think we need all. We didn't get a Ravenclaw perspective.
Oh yes, yeah. Any Ravenclaws? Oh, we got it! Oh my God!
So what's something that you feel the Ravenclaw can bring to the table when it comes to activism? If you want to answer, we can get some else.
You can literally just be like, I am a Ravenclaw. The end.
no offense, like we're better at like. You just. I'm trying to think of the words. Like it's we're the more planning ones.
Mm-hmm.
We just like what he said is like planning. We plan a lot, and it's just like.
Getting all the information,
Yeah,
making sure you know, logical, intelligent,
organized,
creative. Are you Ravenclaw?
Yes.
So we have Ravenclaw, so we have representation of everybody, which is great.
I feel like the majority of Protego is made up of Ravenclaws, but recently we've gotten like.
Did you want to say something?
We did.
Yeah.
I want to say that there's also out of the box thinking.
Yes.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
ego.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's one of the things as we learn, especially science. Science is all about failing, right?
Yes.
We learn together.
Yes.
We didn't get the answer, but all come through it. Let's see what we can find.
Yes. Absolutely. Solutions
We need
oriented.
our Ravenclaws.
Yes.
So what advice would you have for fans to get into fan activism in any fandom?
So for me, once again, kind of going off of things we already talked about before, find things that you're passionate about and see if there's a way to connect them, because sometimes they already exist. Otherwise, there's opportunities like what we did with Protego. It didn't exist, and then we made it happen, and we're here. It's 2015 was a while ago, and we're still doing what we're doing, which is awesome. And but come down to this is what's important to me. Really important to me is obviously queer culture. That's a really big thing that I like to stand behind, especially within the magical fandom that we are in, and we know that this is something that we have to fight for and give advocacy for. So that is something that I also really love to push forward with lots of the other organizations that I work with, and AO3 has been really great about that, OTW, MuggleNet as well. So that was something in addition to obviously animal rights, being Protego was an easy way to step in with that. Once I really dove into fandom, I realized how many voices were being suppressed, and I wanted to help those voices, including my own. So that it's easy to find things, even like we talked about before about people, if you don't want to go out and do things, there is so much online that you can get involved with, signing petitions, organizations that you can work with. I mean, heck, I'm in Discord servers, Slack, you name it, just connecting with people all over the world to come together with the same goals, which is absolutely awesome. Just coming out of the pandemic, we had to create spaces that we could do things without being together. So you don't have to be out there picketing, out there doing, you can do that. There are plenty of people that really love that, and that's really important to them. But if you can't, there are opportunities on your level to do pretty much anything. And a lot of stuff already exists, as well as if there's something you want to do it. The Slytherin's telling you, do it.
I mean, I second that in terms of accessibility, because I think more introverted people who are really passionate don't always want to be on the front lines, and they don't always want to be out there. But I think social media platforms are huge now, and so even when it comes to the likes of signing petitions and sharing and using your voice in a more mild way that you can tell what you're passionate about without being on those front lines, I think is important. And yeah, it's just finding your niche, it's finding what you love, and I guarantee you, if you love something or passionate about something, there is someone that will share the same interest. So, find your people.
Look where we are. You're amongst your people. There's so many of us here, which is great.
Yeah, I think that fan activism in particular is more centered around a sense of community than any other type of activism, because you are sharing a love of two things, that fandom plus your cause. And so that's what I've loved so far about working with the Protego Foundation. And I've also just felt very much just being here. This is my first LeakyCon, by the way. And so this has been, her too. This has been just an amazing experience, because even just being here is a form of activism.
Yeah.
and how inclusive it is, and the conversations that are being had, and you know, I don't know, it warmed my heart, you know, being at that welcoming ceremony and just finding all these Potterheads who also all feel very strongly about, you know, elevating minority voices and just making sure that everyone's included in, you know, here. I love it. So I just feel like,
our actors.
Right,
So awesome.
yes.
That's huge. I mean, already we're like, hey, we're here and we're going to respect this really important cause. So that's huge. We're surrounded by activism every single day in all different forms, which is awesome.
So we'd like to turn over the floor to you. As far as, you know, has there been an example of activism that you've participated in, or if you have a question about fan activism for the panel as well. I know, you know, it's a little scary to walk up and ask a question, but we do have some goodies for anybody who does. Yeah. We've already gotten some people to volunteer information, so we'll make sure to give some to them too. But you know, any questions from anybody, or any other ways you have found to be a fan activist?
No pressure, guys.
Okay.
Yes, person we don't know in the front.
What do you remember? What would you say was like the first action that you did that you consider activism in your life?
Oh yeah, that's.
Like mine was picking up trash on the beach. Like when I was a kid, I would just do that naturally, and I feel like that's activism. So like, what's the earliest thing that you feel like you ever did?
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, you said picking up stuff at the beach, and I was a Boy Scout growing up. And so there was definitely a lot of like community service projects that we would do. But they were honestly one of my favorite things because I just felt like, you know, just going out there and actually doing something that had an end product, whether it was like, you know, there's a specific plant that was in El Paso that was actually an invasive species, and so we had to actually try to like, people have to go out and dig them up and destroy them in order for it to not soak up all the water in the desert. But so, you know, we spent a lot of time just going out and doing that, and just doing that makes you feel like, okay, even like this is making a difference. It doesn't feel like much, but it is. So yeah, that's me.
I don't know if this is definitely not the earliest, but it's the one that I've done consistently. Is all throughout my teens, my mum and I rescued dogs from the shelters in LA, because the shelters in California are really high kill and it's really sad. And so we worked with this foundation called the Dexter Foundation, and there was like a group of fosters that were essentially, you just need a foster for like 3 or 4 days to get them out of the shelter, and then you have a long-term foster. So we did have some long-term fosters. We did have a foster failure, which my grandparents adopted one of those.
I don't know, that's a foster win in my opinion.
And so, yeah, so I think that's something that stuck with me for a while and that I wanted to do for a long time. That was like, it was a really small group of people, so it is activism, and I like posted about it publicly, and I still talk about it as often as I can. But that's the one that has stuck with me the most, I would say.
Oh gosh, and there's a bunch of different things that I remember doing when I was younger. Like I grew up like doing like youth group stuff, as well as Girl Scouts, similar thing. Did a lot of different things, and like one of them that I thought was really great was when we would spend times at kind of like assisted living centers and spending time with older folks, especially those that family don't go see them or anything like that, or doing games and activities and things like that, so that they could have, you know, interaction with other people that wasn't just, you know, everyone that they're with day in and day out and things like that. And so that was always fun, and I know made their day. And so it was just like those little things of those that think they've been forgotten. It's like reminding them that, you know, that they're not, that other people see them. So, yeah.
Just a quick poll. How many Gryffindors do we have out in the audience?
Got one.
Okay, well.
It's okay, I'm with you. Me and you.
How many Hufflepuffs? Yay, alright. And we saw Ravenclaws. Just raise your hand again for us, please. And do we have any Slytherins?
Woo! Yeah! We're here. So we got everybody.
Yeah, we do. I mean, you know, does anybody have, like, in terms of, like, your house and how, like, the traits that your house has, does anybody have, like, examples of how you have felt your house, you've represented your house in your activism that you've done? Because we kind of talked a little bit, we touched a little bit on Ravenclaw, but does anybody else have any other examples?
No pressure.
Were you raising your hand, or were you thinking out?
Yeah.
I'm a singer, and nothing is braver than singing for children.
Ooh.
And so one thing that we do pretty frequently with the opera company was to go and sing for cancer, kids with cancer at the hospitals, and that's it's a pretty rewarding thing to get to bring just a little bit of joy, and yeah, but that's probably the bravest thing I feel like I've ever done. It's a little terrifying. Kids are scary.
And going off of that, it shows with, you know, whatever your talents are or you already do that you're passionate about, you can translate into other volunteer opportunities or, you know, activist opportunities. So it's like things you're doing already, you can use to make a difference somewhere in something. Because it's not necessarily work, especially if it's something that you enjoy doing. So that's the biggest thing, is make sure it brings you joy and you don't get like that jaded sensation of like, I'm not doing enough, I'm not good enough, there's not enough that I can do, and you just feel like you're drowning and can't get things done quick enough. That's okay. We're all here to work together, move towards a goal. We're having fun. Like we still are enjoying and loving and celebrating something, aware that there's something that needs to be addressed, and we're working on it, and we know it's not going to be fixed overnight, and that's okay, and we still love what we're doing. So that's a really, you know, a big part of it, is making sure that it's still something that brings you more joy than pain and sadness, I guess is the thing. So
Yeah.
changing that mindset is huge. Yeah.
I had a question about how do you maybe all practice self-care when you're participating in activism, when you're trying to fight like huge, long-term battles that you may never see the end, you know, in our lifetime. Yeah.
Oof. Yep.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think being in fandom activism is in a way, in itself, just a way to reinvigorate that conversation. Because sometimes things will come out, like, you know, if the HBO show happens, then we're going to start talking about, you know, having conversations and using that as a catalyst for, you know, talking about creatures and in the real world. But you do get fatigued.
Yeah.
Like, you just get, I don't know, tired of having the same conversations with people. And so I mean, at the Protego Foundation, I know for a fact, we are big advocates of taking the time that you need. So if you need to take a break from the activism, just let someone know.
Yeah.
They'll be like, great, take your break, come back when you're ready. You know, and that's the great thing about volunteers.
Yeah.
You don't have, they don't pay your check, so
Right.
you don't have an obligation to stay.
Yeah.
You know, you could take your little break and then come back when you're ready.
Yeah, because that was a huge thing. I remember going to it was the first time that I really sat in it and thought about how activism and mental health come hand in hand, because especially with the animal rights world, it's so easy for us to get caught up thinking, oh my gosh, there's however many animals out there right now and bad things are happening and blah, 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 and that goes for like any level of activism. You can get overwhelmed and crushed by things that you wish that you could change with a snap of your fingers, and you just feel so guilty that you can't do enough. But you have to kind of sit in it and realize it's okay for you to be happy. Don't feel guilty about living your life, because as long as you are happy and you are healthy, you can do good things and move in the direction to help whatever, you know, organization or thing that you want. So, especially people who are doing front lines work and are out there seeing things happening and, you know, trying to make changes but can't see the change immediately, that can be traumatic. So it's going through like having the support systems you need, taking time away if you need to, remembering why you're doing it, and also just that, it's okay for you to put you first sometimes. Like, we need to do that, because if you're not okay, you can't do what needs to be done. And so that's huge. So it's being okay to take care of yourself so that you can take care of other people and animals.
I think you mentioned reminding yourself the reason why you're doing it. I think that is a really important thing, and like the purpose behind it. And also, I mean, it goes both ways. Like, if you're an activist for something you really love, that's really important to remind yourself of why, and maybe take a step back from the front lines and just make sure, like, have passion for what you're doing is really important, and it can be quite draining. But also, like, knowing why it's necessary. So I'm currently on strike for SAG-AFTRA against the, you know, streaming sites and things like that. Yeah, against the people. And so I think that a lot of people are picketing and they're out on the front lines, which is really important. But it is constantly reminding ourselves of why we're doing it, and so it really is going to be a long old haul, and it's really, really necessary. So, but I think it is reminding and not giving up, and if that means you need to take a step back to like look at the longevity and like what we're fighting for in the long run, I think that's really important.
Yeah, and we can look back in history too of like, things don't happen overnight. Sometimes it does take generations to make change, and that's okay. Like, we're helping create the stepping stones for the future that can carry things on. So obviously we want things to happen quicker than slower, but as long as we keep moving forward, that's what we're doing. We're moving forward, right? So it depends on whatever that pace is, we're going in the right direction.
Love that. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, well,
Question. Coming back to your saying about why we did this, right? What's your opinion? Why people volunteer, or why people give for their own ego to be fed up, or for their pleasure of doing something good, or more for the cause?
For me or for Ellie?
What we are doing this because our feel-good sensation, or for that animal? So what's your opinion?
Oh gosh, that's a really really deep and complex. And it's like, okay, let's peel back the layers on this. I think it's kind of like, it's a balance of both, because obviously we have an awareness of, this is something that I want to change, and I'm passionate about this change to happen. And when I know that I am making some sort of impact, or we get little wins, like, you know, with all of our different campaigns, it does warm my heart to know that I'm like, I was a part of that. And that makes me feel really good to know that it validates that what I'm doing is making things happen, and not necessarily as a means of like, I'm so great, you know, whatever. But it's just, that helps continue, like we talked about, fueling, continuing to do what you're doing. Because if you run into roadblocks, it can get very, like, it really is hard to push through things when you don't see results. So having those moments to be able to celebrate what you've done and what your friends have done and everyone you work with, I think is a good thing. Like, you want to be able to put a smile on your face and be like, wow, I did a thing, and that's a change that I can see and everyone can see, and I'm really proud of myself to be a part of that. I hope that was okay.
I think it is the people at the Protego Foundation have been in it for a long time, and so, like, despite the wins, if you get wins or if you don't, so it is, if you love it enough, you're really passionate about it, you'll keep going despite the fact if you don't get a win. And so if things don't work out your way, or you keep going. And so that's when you know someone is very passionate about it, is going through it when you hit like a low, or when things are really tough and you're not making any moves forward, but you keep going. That's where I think the ego separates, is because you have to just swallow it and say, well, we need to keep going anyway.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that also like brings up a conversation that has been being had more recently. You know, influencers will go out and take pictures and, you know, for a cause or whatever, and we've now put the label on that of virtue signaling, right? You're virtue signaling when you do that, but you're not actually really doing all that much for the cause. And I think that's where that comes in, that they're, you know, people are arguing that they're doing it more for the ego than for the actual cause. But I mean, I would even argue that even that has a place in activism. Even if they're just making that one post, or like posing with a, you know, a picket sign for one picture, they're not out there all day, but they still posted a picture that is bringing awareness to other people.
It's the outreach to a certain extent.
Right.
Yeah. It goes kind of like that accidental activism that I, you know, talked about. It's like even if someone didn't necessarily care before, they're now aware because someone they really know a lot, and it's reaching a ton more people. And so I feel like any sort of advertisement or push for a campaign, regardless of how it's done, even if it's like, okay, like you said, like they took a picture, like it's cool. It's still something that did something and is making an impact. So I don't think we can discount things that, even if small things, can still make a difference on top of like the big stuff. Like it's all helping. We're all working together, I guess is the best way. Like there's no right way to be an activist. Like there's totally different levels of what you can give, what you're going to do. And that's okay. We need all kinds of people to be able to help with every sort of cause. So you being you, just as you are, has something that can give on your level, and that's great. Anything else? Person we don't know in the front.
This question's for Ellie. So I know you like cooking, and like that's honestly can be a form of activism if you're like sharing that with people. So are you still doing that? Because I know you talked about like maybe like doing a blog or something.
Yeah.
And like, what is your favorite thing to cook?
So I am still doing it. I really love to cook. And to be fair, for the last 2 years, I've been like saving a bunch of recipes to one day like launch a cookbook, but we'll see. I don't know. I just I've always liked cooking. I'm a celiac, so it's an autoimmune thing. So I've always had to avoid gluten. And then I went vegan, and so I just have to get really creative with what I cook. And I do post about it on social media, but my stories are quite obnoxious because I take you through the entire cooking process. It's just so rubbish, and I really need to figure out how to do it.
Versus like the hand wave of like, look at these green onions. Woo,
yeah, no.
Green onions, unfold.
Yeah, no, it's like, okay, so I'm gonna peel the carrots, and it's a 15-minute video. So bad. I need to make a reel or something. But yes, I think I'm a big dessert person, so I like making desserts. I learned how to make like a really good gluten-free vegan cheesecake. That's really
fantastic.
That's
I'm really
excited.
I need that.
Yeah,
Being like gluten sensitive and all that. Yeah, I need that.
So I do love to do it, and one day it is like I've been saving recipes constantly. That I'm like, oh, one day I'll like make a cookbook maybe. But I think it is a form of activism per se. It's also something that, I mean, I guess I really love, so that's great. And being someone who's gluten-free and vegan and just all round a pain in the bum when it comes to eating, like it is, I've just been very creative with it, and so I don't mind talking about it because it's okay finding gluten-free stuff and it's okay finding vegan stuff, and then you put the two together and I just eat a salad. So, yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
I just wanted you to talk about food.
Yes.
Be on the lookout for Ellie's cookbook. Yeah. Stores soon.
Like in 10 years' time.
Yeah, in 10 years.
I need to perfect everything there. I also love soup. I make a lot of soups.
Oh yes, big soups. Yes.
So yeah, in case you haven't noticed, Ellie has been using a time turner to be everywhere, all at once, this weekend. So I wanted to take a second to thank you for taking the time to do the legwork and not just be here, but also have these conversations and be our ambassador outside of just this hour. We absolutely love everything that you do for Protego Foundation and for the animals. So we'll go down the line. Where can people find you on social media?
You first, or me, and
Down
then we
the
come
line,
back.
yeah.
Okay.
People are most interested in
Okay, Moses, so then I'll go over there.
You can find me on Instagram. My handle is Ellie Darcey-Alden. So you can find out how to make soup and cheesecake on there.
Fantastic.
So that's the biggest social media platform that I use. So that's where you can probably check in with me more often.
Yeah. For me, I'm not super active on social media except for my podcast. That's a big thing that I am super involved with. So, like I had mentioned before, Care of Magical Shippers is my Harry Potter podcast that me and my best friend get together and we talk about different Harry Potter ships and celebrate fandom, and it's so much fun. So Magical Ship Pod on Instagram and on Twitter. We're also Care of Magical Shippers on Tumblr, things like that. We're always looking to connect with fans. We have a big Discord server. Always, connecting, especially like lots of queer advocacy and things like that. So that's pretty much where I'm always hanging out. So yeah, aside from Protego stuff. So.
I am on Instagram only, really, at vegankid915, where I mostly just post pictures of my food and just veganizing
So you
Mexican
can talk about food too. It's not just me.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so that about wraps it up for us, but we do have two special announcements. One is that you can visit our booth. We are in booth 803. 803. I was like, it's either 803
we have a booth. It's over there.
We are collecting signatures for our Defend the Darrows campaign, which we are asking conventions to make a pledge not to bring in wild animals like wolves or owls for photo opportunities. And then the second announcement, which is a big one, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Ellie.
So Protego Foundation has a new campaign coming out, but I'm really excited about it because it's an animal I'm really passionate about, which is horses, and I've always loved horses. And so the new campaign is called Release the Reins, and it'll be about ending the cruelty horse-drawn carriages industry, using the plight of thestrals as inspiration, which comes from this magical fandom. This
wonderful book series.
So that'll be coming soon, and make sure you look out for that.
Thank you.